We need you to resign, Clara, for the good of the company. Lauren Pierce sat across from me in the sterile HR office, her manicured hands folded on the table. Her voice was soft, almost sympathetic, but her eyes were cold. Beside her, the HR manager shuffled papers nervously, avoiding my gaze. My heart hammered against my ribs. This couldn't be happening. I don't understand, I managed, my voice cracking. What did I do? Lauren sighed, tilting her head with practiced concern. You know what happened with the campaign. The backlash was significant. The board feels it's best if we move forward without complications. Complications. That's what I was now, a problem to be erased. My hands trembled as I stared at the resignation letter they'd already prepared. My name was typed at the bottom, waiting for my signature. Everything was decided before I even walked into this room. This will be easier for everyone, Lauren continued gently. We'll provide references, no legal issues, just a clean break. I wanted to scream, to fight, to demand justice. Instead, I picked up the pen. My signature looked shaky, unfamiliar. As I stood to leave, I noticed something strange. My company email notification disappeared from my phone screen before I reached the door. They'd already locked me out. 6 months earlier, everything had been different. I'd walked into the Monday morning meeting buzzing with nervous excitement. After 3 years at Nexara Marketing, I was finally getting my chance. Lauren had just announced I'd be leading our biggest campaign of the year. Clara's going to do amazing things with this, Lauren had said, beaming at me across the conference table. I've been watching her work, and she's exactly what this project needs. Fresh perspective, creative energy. My cheeks had flushed with pride. Lauren Pierce was a legend in our industry. She'd built Nexara's reputation from nothing, turning us into one of the most respected agencies in the city. Having her faith in me felt like validation of every late night and weekend I'd spent proving myself. After the meeting, she'd pulled me aside in the hallway. Don't let me down, Clara. This campaign succeeds, and you're looking at senior manager, maybe even my eventual replacement. I'd practically floated back to my desk. That afternoon, my colleague Marcus stopped by my cubicle. He was older, quieter, someone who'd been at Nexara longer than anyone except Lauren herself. Congratulations on the campaign, he said carefully. Thanks, I'm so excited. He glanced around, then leaned closer. Just be careful, Lauren's brilliant, but she has a pattern. What do you mean? His expression darkened. She praises you until you outshine her, then suddenly you're gone. I dismissed Marcus's warning as office gossip. Lauren had always been supportive, mentoring me through difficult clients and tight deadlines. Why would she sabotage me? For 2 weeks, I buried myself in research. The campaign was for a national retail chain launching a new sustainability initiative. They wanted something authentic, something that would cut through the noise of corporate greenwashing. I worked through evenings and weekends, sketching concepts and scrapping them, until finally it clicked. Instead of polished perfection, what if we showed the messy, honest truth of trying to do better? Real employees, real mistakes, real progress. I called it Perfectly Imperfect. When I presented it to Lauren in her glass-walled office, she'd actually stood up from her desk. Clara, this is brilliant, she breathed, studying my mock-ups. It's vulnerable, human, exactly what brands are afraid to be. So I can move forward. Absolutely. Get the team started immediately. This is going to be huge. I left her office walking on air. Finally, my big break. That Friday, Lauren called an all-hands meeting. The entire company crowded into our main conference room. I assumed she wanted to introduce the campaign to everyone, maybe let me present it. Instead, she stood at the front with my presentation boards behind her. I'm excited to share a new direction we're taking, she began, clicking through my slides. A campaign that strips away corporate pretense and embraces authentic imperfection. She talked for 20 minutes. She never said my name once. I sat frozen in my chair as Lauren accepted congratulations from the team. My concepts, my words, my vision, all presented as hers. When she asked for questions, I raised my hand, my voice shaking. I'd like to add. Thanks, Clara, but I think we've covered everything, Lauren interrupted smoothly, already moving to the next question. Implementation details can be handled in team meetings. After everyone dispersed, I caught her in the hallway. Lauren, I noticed you didn't mention I developed that concept. She smiled, touching my shoulder. Oh, Clara, you're brilliant at execution, truly, but leadership means presenting a unified vision. Let's keep our roles clear, okay? You create, I communicate. That's how great agencies work. I wanted to argue, but her tone made it clear the conversation was over. That afternoon, a company-wide email arrived. The campaign timeline, budget approvals, team assignments, everything I'd built. At the top, in bold letters, Project Lead, Lauren Pierce. My name appeared once, buried in the middle. Creative Support, Clara Hayes. I stared at my screen, feeling something harden inside me. Marcus had been right. But I needed this job. I had rent, student loans, a career to protect. So I swallowed my anger and got back to work. The campaign launched 3 weeks later on a Tuesday morning. I'd refined every detail, the photography capturing authentic moments, the copy striking the perfect balance between honest and hopeful. Lauren had approved everything, signing off on the final posts herself. By noon, I was monitoring social media responses from my desk. The early comments were positive. People appreciated the authenticity. Then, around 2 o'clock, something shifted. A post we'd published, one showing an employee discussing a past packaging mistake, was being screenshot and shared with angry commentary. This is manipulative. Fake vulnerability to sell products. Performance activism at its worst. Within an hour, #BoycottNexara was trending. My phone buzzed. Lauren, conference room now. I grabbed my laptop and ran, my stomach twisting. In the conference room, our CEO and senior management were already assembled, faces grim. Lauren sat at the head of the table, looking composed but concerned. Clara, good, close the door, our CEO said tersely. We need to contain this situation immediately. Everyone turned to look at me. Lauren touched my arm gently as I sat down. Stay quiet, she whispered. I'll fix this. But even as she said it, I saw something calculating in her eyes. Let me clarify what happened. Lauren began, her voice measured and professional. The campaign strategy was sound. Unfortunately, Clara deviated from our approved messaging in the final execution. My head snapped toward her. What? No, Clara, please. Lauren's tone was kind but firm. I know you meant well, but we specifically discussed keeping the tone lighter. This post about the packaging mistake, we agreed it was too risky. That was a complete lie. She'd loved that particular post, calling it the emotional heart of the campaign. Lauren, you approved every single post, I said, hearing the desperation in my voice. I have the emails. Let's focus on solutions, the CEO interrupted. Finger pointing doesn't help. We need a statement ready within the hour. As the meeting continued, I pulled out my laptop and opened my email. I searched for the approval thread where Lauren had enthusiastically signed off on everything. I scrolled through my inbox once, then twice. The messages weren't there. I checked my sent folder, my archived items, even my trash. Nothing. The entire conversation had vanished as if it never existed. Across the table, Lauren met my eyes briefly. Her expression was perfectly neutral, but I saw the truth there. She'd deleted them. Somehow, she'd removed every piece of evidence. My hands shook as I closed my laptop. How had she erased emails from my account? Did she have IT access I didn't know about? Or had she planned this from the beginning, somehow ensuring nothing could be traced back to her? Clara, are you listening? The CEO's voice cut through my panic. Yes, sorry. I asked if you have documentation showing what was approved versus what was published. The emails are gone, but I know what we agreed. Then it's your word against the project leads. He stood, signaling the meeting's end. Draft a response strategy. Both of you will reconvene at 5. Everyone filed out except Lauren. She gathered her papers slowly, deliberately waiting until we were alone. Clara, she said softly, I know you're upset, but sometimes campaigns fail. It happens. The important thing is learning from it. You deleted my emails, I whispered. She looked at me with perfect innocence. I don't know what you mean. Maybe you forgot to document things properly. It happens when you're overwhelmed. She left, her heels clicking down the hallway. That evening, HR sent me a calendar invitation. Subject line, urgent follow-up on campaign incident. Tomorrow at 9. I barely slept that night, my mind racing through every conversation, every decision. How could I prove what really happened when all evidence had disappeared? The HR office felt smaller than I remembered. The manager sat beside Lauren, both wearing expressions of professional regret. Clara, we appreciate you coming in, the HR manager began. After reviewing yesterday's incident, we've concluded there was a significant breakdown in communication and judgment. I followed every approval. Unfortunately, without documentation, we can't verify that, she interrupted gently. What we do know is that a campaign launched with your name attached has caused serious reputational damage. Lauren leaned forward, her voice dripping with false sympathy. Clara, I've defended you to the board, but they're concerned. The client is threatening to pull their contract. We're looking at potential lawsuits. This isn't fair. Which is why we want to make this easier for everyone, the HR manager continued. We're offering you the option to resign. We'll provide positive references, 3-month severance, but we need this resolved quickly and quietly. My vision blurred. They weren't asking, they were telling. What if I refuse? The room went silent. Lauren's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in her eyes. Then we proceed formally, the HR manager said carefully. Investigations, documentation reviews, potential termination for cause, no severance, references that reflect, concerns about your judgment. They had me trapped. Fight and lose everything, or surrender and lose only my dignity. I need to think. We need an answer today, Lauren said softly, for everyone's sake. Through the office window, I could see my desk. As I watched, an IT technician approached it and began disconnecting my computer. They were erasing me before I even decided. I cleaned out my desk in a fog. 3 years of work stuffed into a cardboard box, awards I'd won, photos from team events, a coffee mug that said creative genius that my team had given me last Christmas. The office was quiet. People averted their eyes as I passed, suddenly fascinated by their keyboards. Nobody wanted to be associated with failure, with scandal. Near the elevator, I paused. My team's workspace was just around the corner. I couldn't leave without saying goodbye, even if they couldn't risk talking to me. Mia, my intern, was at her desk. When she saw me, her eyes filled with tears. Clara, this is so wrong. It's okay, Mia. You'll do great things here. She glanced around quickly, then pulled a manila folder from her bag. I printed something. I thought you might need it. She pressed it into my hands and hugged me quickly before hurrying away. In the elevator, alone, I opened the folder. Inside was a perfect copy of the email thread with Lauren. Every approval, every enthusiastic comment, every piece of evidence I thought I'd lost. Mia must have printed it before Lauren deleted everything. My hands trembled as I read Lauren's words. Love the packaging mistake post. It's authentic and brave. Definitely include it. I had proof. I had everything. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, staring at the printed emails. Here it was, complete vindication. Evidence that Lauren had approved everything, then lied to save herself. I could expose her right now. Send these to the CEO, to HR, to every person who'd watched me be humiliated. But then what? A he-said-she-said battle with someone who'd already proven she'd destroy anyone in her path. Legal threats. My reputation dragged through more mud. I folded the papers carefully and tucked them in my bag. Not to use, but to remember. to remind myself that the truth existed, even when no one believed it. That evening, scrolling numbly through job postings, a LinkedIn message popped up. "Hi Clara, I'm Jordan Chen with Velocity Creative. Saw your portfolio work, brilliant stuff. Would love to talk about opportunities here. Coffee." I almost deleted it. Why would anyone want to hire someone who'd just been pushed out? But something in her message felt genuine. No corporate speak, no careful hedging, just straightforward interest. "Sure," I typed back. "When?" Maybe this disaster was a door closing so another could open. Or maybe I was just desperately hopping for a lifeline. Either way, I had nothing left to lose. Velocity Creative occupied a renovated warehouse in the Arts District. Exposed brick, natural light, and none of the sterile corporate atmosphere I'd grown used to at Nexara. Jordan met me in the lobby wearing jeans and a blazer, her hair in a messy bun. She was my age, maybe younger, with an easy smile that immediately put me at ease. "Thanks for coming," she said, leading me to a conference room that overlooked the main workspace. "I know transitions are rough, I've been there." "You were pushed out too." "Laid off during the pandemic. Best thing that ever happened to me, honestly. Forced me to bet on myself." We talked for an hour. She asked about my work, my philosophy, my vision, not about why I left Nexara. She'd researched enough to know something had gone wrong, but she focused on what I could do, not what had happened to me. "Here's the thing," Jordan finally said. "We're smaller than Nexara, less prestigious, probably lower salary than you're used to, but we're real. No politics, no credit stealing. You do good work, your name goes on it." Something tight in my chest loosened. That sounds perfect, actually. "There's one catch. We just won a major account, a nationwide rebranding for a retail chain. It's huge, and I need someone to lead it. Can you start Monday?" The next 3 weeks blurred together in the best possible way. Velocity's team was small but talented. Designers, copywriters, strategists who genuinely collaborated instead of competing. Jordan ran morning meetings where everyone shared ideas freely, where junior staff weren't afraid to challenge senior decisions. It felt like everything Nexara had pretended to be. The rebranding project was for a mid-sized clothing company trying to reconnect with customers after years of declining sales. They wanted something authentic, something that acknowledged their mistakes while showing genuine change. The concept came to me one evening while reviewing their customer complaints. People weren't angry, they were disappointed. They'd loved this brand once and felt betrayed by falling quality and broken promises. What if we acknowledged that directly? I drafted a campaign concept centered on honesty and second chances. "We messed up. Watch us do better." Raw, vulnerable, and showing actual changes they were making. Factory improvements, quality testing, transparent pricing. When I presented it to the team, the room went silent. Then Jordan grinned. "This is going to be huge," she said. "But Clara, are you sure? It's risky. Admitting failure isn't exactly marketing playbook stuff." "Authenticity isn't risky anymore," I replied. "Fake perfection is." We launched a teaser post that Friday afternoon. Just a simple video of the CEO saying, "We let you down. We're sorry. Here's how we're fixing it." By Monday morning, it had 3 million views. The campaign exploded across social media, faster than any of us had predicted. Comments flooded in by the thousands. "Finally, a brand being honest. This is how you rebuild trust. I might actually shop here again." Industry blogs picked it up. Marketing podcasts analyzed it. Influencers shared it with their audiences, praising the courage it took to admit imperfection. Jordan burst into my office Tuesday morning, laptop in hand. "Clara, look at this." A major advertising publication had written a feature. "How one campaign is rewriting the rules of brand recovery." They quoted the CEO, analyzed our strategy, and highlighted the overwhelming positive response. "This is what ethical marketing looks like," the article concluded. "Honesty that respects consumers instead of manipulating them." My phone buzzed with notifications. Former colleagues congratulating me, industry contacts reaching out. strangers thanking me for creating something meaningful. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. That afternoon, a new message appeared in my inbox. The sender, a business journalist from a major newspaper. "Hi, Clara, I'm writing a piece about ethical marketing practices and corporate accountability. I understand you previously worked at Nexara Marketing. Would you be willing to discuss your experience there?" My stomach dropped. I hadn't spoken publicly about what happened. Part of me wanted to let it go, to focus on moving forward. But another part remembered Mia slipping me that folder, risking her own position to make sure the truth survived. I met the journalist, Nina Alvarez, at a quiet coffee shop downtown. She was in her 40s, sharp-eyed and direct, with a recording device she placed carefully on the table between us. "I'm investigating patterns of credit theft and scapegoating in marketing agencies," she explained. "Your name came up through sources at Nexara who reached out to me anonymously." "What did they say?" "That you were forced out for a campaign failure that wasn't your fault. That someone else approved the work, then blamed you when it backfired." She leaned forward. "Sound familiar?" I stared at my coffee. "I can't comment on internal company matters. I signed paperwork when I left." "Severance agreements usually prevent you from disparaging the company, not from stating facts. But I understand your hesitation." She pulled out a folder. "These were sent to me by multiple current and former Nexara employees. You might find them interesting." Inside were printed emails, Slack messages, and internal memos. Names were redacted, but the pattern was clear. Lauren taking credit for others' work, shifting blame when projects failed, forcing out anyone who threatened her position. One email, from nearly 2 years ago, caught my eye. A senior designer had been terminated after a botched campaign. The internal memo blamed their poor judgment, but attached emails showed Lauren had overridden their concerns and pushed forward anyway. The same playbook she'd used on me. "Did you know about this person?" Nina asked gently. "No, I thought I was the only one." "You're not. There've been at least 4 others in 5 years." "I'm not here for revenge," I told Nina carefully, "and I won't bash my former employer on record." She nodded, unsurprised. "I respect that, but I'm running this story with or without your participation. The pattern is too clear, the source is too consistent. I wanted to give you a chance to add context, that's all." "What exactly will the article say?" "That Nexara's director of communications has a documented history of taking credit for subordinates' work and scapegoating them when projects fail. That the company's HR department has enabled this pattern by forcing victims to resign quietly. That their commitment to ethical marketing is performative, not real." My heart pounded. Part of me wanted to add my voice to confirm everything she'd discovered. But another part, the part that had signed those papers, that needed the references, that wanted to move on, hesitated. "Do what you need to do," I finally said. "But leave my name out of it, please." "I can do that. The story doesn't need you specifically. The pattern speaks for itself." 2 weeks later, the article published with the headline, "Behind the Perfect Image, How Nexara Marketing Sacrifices Employees to Protect Leadership." It was devastating and thorough. Former employees spoke anonymously about Lauren's manipulation. Internal documents showed HR's complicity. The article even mentioned my campaign specifically, how the controversial posts had been greenlit by leadership, then blamed on lower-level staff. Within hours, Nexara's carefully curated social media presence exploded with angry comments. People tagged the article, demanding accountability. Industry groups started quiet investigations. And Lauren, predictably, went into damage control. Lauren's response came fast. She published a LinkedIn post the morning after the article dropped. "I've seen the recent allegations, and I'm deeply disappointed by this attempt to undermine our agency's reputation. Miscommunication happens in fast-paced environments. We've always valued our team and worked to create opportunities for growth. Sometimes difficult decisions must be made for the organization's health, but those decisions are never personal." The post was perfectly crafted, acknowledging nothing while appearing reasonable and hurt. Classic corporate deflection. But the comments section told a different story. Interesting you mention miscommunication when sources showed you deleted approval emails. I worked with someone you pushed out. They were brilliant. You took credit for everything. Not personal. You destroyed people's careers to protect your own image. Within hours, people started connecting dots. Someone linked to my current agency's viral campaign, nodding I'd previously worked at Nexara. Wait, Clara Hayes did that amazing honesty campaign. Didn't she used to work there? Didn't Nexara fire someone over a failed campaign right before this article mentions? Timing seems convenient. The narrative was writing itself without me saying a single word. Former colleagues began speaking up, carefully, anonymously at first, then more boldly. Stories emerged of presentations where Lauren presented others' work as her own, of quiet exits after unexplained performance issues, of talented people driven out by systematic undermining. Nexara's board called an emergency meeting. Industry insiders reported that major clients were quietly reconsidering their contracts. And through it all, I said nothing publicly. I went to work, led my team, and focused on the campaign that was succeeding on its own merit. Lauren tried to pin the leaks on me. She published a second statement suggesting that disgruntled former employees were coordinating a smear campaign, hinting at legal action against those spreading false information. It backfired spectacularly. Nina Alvarez, the journalist, published a follow-up article confirming that her sources were all current Nexara employees who'd reached out independently. Ms. Pierce's suggestion that victims of workplace misconduct are engaged in coordinated attacks only demonstrates the retaliatory culture that sources described. Meanwhile, Velocity Creative's CEO posted a public statement on our company page. We're proud to have Clara Hayes leading our brand strategy. Her integrity and talent speak for themselves. We don't comment on our team members' previous employers, but we know character when we see it. The post went viral. Comments flooded in supporting me, praising Velocity for standing behind their people, and contrasting our approach with Nexara's defensive posturing. Then, mysteriously, a new piece of evidence appeared online. Someone anonymously posted the full email thread between Lauren and me, the one Mia had printed, showing Lauren's enthusiastic approval of every campaign element she later claimed I'd done without authorization. The smoking gun was public. Lauren's professional reputation collapsed overnight. Industry blogs cataloged her pattern of behavior. Former colleagues shared their experiences publicly. Marketing ethics panels began using her case as an example of toxic leadership. That evening, she emailed me directly. The message was short. Clara, please, I know we had our differences, but this has gone too far. Help me fix this. I'll make it right, I promise. We can work together to calm things down. I stared at the email for a long time, my finger hovering over the reply button. I typed slowly, choosing each word carefully. Lauren, I haven't said anything publicly about what happened between us. I haven't coordinated any response or encouraged anyone to speak out. The truth came forward because multiple people over multiple years experienced the same pattern. I don't hold grudges, but I don't rewrite history either. I hope you find a way forward that doesn't involve hurting other people. I hit send and closed my laptop. 2 hours later, Nexara's corporate account posted a brief statement. After careful review, Lauren Pierce has resigned from her position as Director of Communications, effective immediately. We thank her for her service and wish her well in future endeavors. Nexara remains committed to fostering an ethical, supportive workplace culture. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. They used the exact phrase Lauren had used on me. For the good of the company. Comments flooded in immediately. Some celebrated. Others pointed out that Nexara's statement still didn't acknowledge wrongdoing or apologize to the people Lauren had hurt. My former colleagues started messaging me privately. Clara, I'm so sorry we didn't speak up when it happened to you. You handled this with so much grace. I wish I'd had your courage. Thank you for surviving this. It helped the rest of us find our voices. Their words meant more than I expected. I'd felt so alone during those awful weeks, believing I was the problem, questioning my own competence and sanity. Knowing others understood, that they'd witnessed the same manipulation, it was validating in a way I hadn't realized I needed. Life settled into a new normal. The campaign, I'd led won industry recognition. Our clients' sales increased 40% in 3 months. Jordan promoted me to creative director with genuine equity in the company. I started mentoring young marketers who reached out through LinkedIn, many of them sharing stories of workplace manipulation and credit theft. I couldn't fix their situations, but I could listen and remind them their experiences were real, their talents were valid. Then, 2 months after Lauren's resignation, I received an unexpected invitation. The National Marketing Association wanted me to speak on a panel about ethical leadership and workplace integrity. The venue was a major industry conference, the same one where Lauren had been a keynote speaker for 3 consecutive years. I almost declined. Part of me wanted to stay quiet, to let my work speak for itself without making myself a public figure in this conversation. But I thought about the messages I'd received from young professionals trapped in similar situations. I thought about the pattern Nina's article had exposed, how many talented people had been chewed up by systems that protected manipulators over victims. I'd be honored, I wrote back. The conference was held downtown in a massive convention center. Hundreds of marketing professionals filled the auditorium. As I waited backstage, my hands trembled slightly. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about a conversation the industry needed to have. The moderator introduced me, and I walked onto the stage. I'd prepared notes, but found myself speaking from the heart instead. I'm here because I learned something important this year, I began. Truth builds brands, fear destroys them, and that applies to how we treat people just as much as how we market products. I talked about the campaign that had brought me here, not the scandal at Nexara, but the successful one at Velocity. About how acknowledging imperfection created deeper trust than performing perfection ever could. When companies prioritize image over integrity, when leaders take credit for others' work to protect their own reputations, they're not just hurting individuals. They're building a foundation of dishonesty that eventually collapses, because you can't inspire authentic marketing if your internal culture is based on manipulation. The audience was silent, leaning forward in their seats. If you're in a workplace where good work gets stolen, where speaking up gets you punished, where mistakes are blamed on whoever has the least power, that's not normal. That's not professional development. That's abuse disguised as business. I saw people nodding, some wiping their eyes. But here's what I also learned. Your work has value even when others try to take credit. Your truth matters even when systems try to silence it. And sometimes the best thing that can happen is getting pushed out of a toxic situation, because it forces you to bet on yourself instead of waiting for approval that will never come. The applause was thunderous. Afterward, dozens of people waited to talk to me, sharing their own stories, asking for advice, thanking me for speaking their experiences aloud. Someone in the audience had recorded my speech and posted it online. By the next morning, it had spread across LinkedIn, Twitter, and TikTok. The video of my speech went unexpectedly viral, racking up millions of views across platforms. Marketing professionals shared it, but so did people from completely different industries: teachers, nurses, tech workers, anyone who'd experienced credit theft or workplace manipulation. The comments section became a support group. This happened to me in finance. My boss presented my analysis as his own for 2 years. I was fired for attitude problems after I questioned why my project wasn't credited to me. Currently experiencing this, her speech made me realize I'm not crazy or oversensitive. News outlets picked up the story. I did a few interviews, always careful to focus on systemic issues rather than personal grievances. I talked about protecting your work, documenting approvals, understanding the difference between mentorship and exploitation. Lauren tried to reappear online as a personal branding consultant, posting vague, inspirational quotes about resilience and learning from setbacks. The internet responded with brutal mockery. People posted side-by-side comparisons of her inspirational content with quotes from Nina's original article. Someone created a parody account. Her comments were flooded with messages from her former victims. She deleted her profiles within a week. Meanwhile, Nexara's new leadership reached out through official channels. They wanted to rebuild trust and hoped I might consult on developing better workplace policies. I politely declined. They'd had years to address the toxic culture. They only cared now because the consequences had become public. My life moved forward in ways I'd never anticipated. Speaking invitations continued. The campaign won a national award for ethical marketing. Jordan and I expanded Velocity Creative, bringing on new clients who specifically sought us out because of our reputation for integrity. 6 months after my panel speech, I was leading a creative workshop for college students when one of them raised her hand. "My professor showed us your video," she said. "The one about truth in marketing. It changed how I think about my career. But I have a question. Do you regret what happened? Like, would you go back and change it if you could?" I thought about it carefully. The experience was awful while it was happening. Getting pushed out, blamed for something that wasn't my fault, watching someone destroy my reputation, that was genuinely traumatic. The students listened intently. But it forced me to recognize I'd been accepting things I shouldn't have. Small boundary violations, tiny credit thefts, being grateful for crumbs of recognition. I'd normalized a toxic environment because I wanted to succeed within it. Getting pushed out was painful, but it freed me from a system that would have slowly diminished me even if I'd stayed. Another student spoke up, "So it was worth it." I wouldn't say it was worth it. That implies the abuse was justified by the outcome. I'd say I survived it and rebuilt something better. There's a difference. After the workshop, several students approached me privately, sharing their own experiences with exploitative internships and unethical work environments. I listened, offered what guidance I could, and reminded them their instincts were valid. That evening, I recorded a follow-up video addressing some common questions people had asked after my panel's speech. I talked about documentation, about recognizing manipulation patterns, about knowing when to fight and when to walk away. I titled it simply, "Why I Left My Job." I never mentioned Nexara by name, never called out Lauren specifically. I just told my story honestly, what happened, how it felt, what I learned. The video spread faster than anything I'd created before. Within 24 hours, 5 million views. Within 48 hours, coverage in major business publications. By the end of the week, used as a teaching example in business ethics courses across the country. Everyone knew who I was talking about. The timeline matched, the details aligned with Nina's investigation, the industry connections were obvious. But because I never named names, I couldn't be accused of defamation or violating my severance agreement. I simply told my truth and let people draw their own conclusions. The comments section became a movement. Thousands of people shared similar stories, many for the first time. Professional organizations started developing new policies. Universities revised their business ethics curricula. Companies began examining their own internal cultures more critically. "Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving them wrong," I said at the end of the video. "It's showing you didn't need them to be right." That line became the one everyone quoted, shared, turned into graphics and motivational posts. But for me, it wasn't about revenge at all. It was about reclaiming narrative, about refusing to let someone else's manipulation define my story. Nexara's new CEO reached out again, this time with a formal apology. They acknowledged that their previous leadership had failed to maintain ethical standards and had enabled harmful behavior. They offered a public statement vindicating me, if I wanted it. I considered it carefully. Vindication would feel good. Public acknowledgement of what really happened would close that chapter definitively. But I realized I didn't need it anymore. "Thank you for the apology," I wrote back to Nexara's CEO. I appreciate the acknowledgement, but I don't need a public statement. What happened is in the past. I've moved on to work that aligns with my values, and I'm focused on building rather than revisiting. It felt good to mean those words genuinely. A year ago, I would have desperately wanted that vindication, needed it to prove my worth and competence. Now, my work spoke for itself. My reputation was built on what I'd created, not on correcting someone else's lies. The CEO responded graciously, saying he understood and respected my decision. He mentioned they'd implemented new policies protecting employees from retaliation and credit theft, inspired partly by the conversation my story had sparked industry-wide. That was enough. System change mattered more than personal vindication. Velocity Creative continued growing. We became known not just for effective campaigns, but for how we treated our team. Young professionals sought us out specifically because they'd heard about our culture, one where credit was given fairly, where mistakes were learning opportunities, where speaking up was encouraged rather than punished. I hired 3 new creative directors that year, all of them talented people who'd left toxic environments elsewhere. We built something together that felt revolutionary simply because it was honest. No politics, no manipulation, just good work done by people who trusted each other. Mia, my former intern who'd saved those emails, reached out. She'd left Nexara 6 months after I did, unable to stomach the culture once she understood it clearly. I hired her immediately as a junior strategist. She deserved to work somewhere that valued integrity as much as creativity. One afternoon, going through old files to archive, I found the folder she'd given me that terrible day, Lauren's approval emails, the evidence I'd carried like a talisman but never needed to use. I held it for a moment, remembering how desperate I'd felt, how essential those pages had seemed to proving my worth. Then I shredded them. I didn't need proof anymore. I had something better, a career built on work I could be proud of, relationships based on mutual respect, and the knowledge that I'd survived and thrived. A year after everything fell apart, I stood in Velocity Creative's new expanded office space. We'd outgrown our warehouse and moved into a building 3 times the size. My corner office had windows overlooking the city, shelves filled with awards our team had earned together. Jordan stopped by with coffee, settling into the chair across from my desk. "Remember when you walked in here looking like you'd been through a war?" she asked, smiling. I felt like I had been. And now look at you, creative director, equity partner, industry speaker, building the exact kind of agency you wished you'd worked at all along. "We're building it," I corrected. "This isn't my success, it's ours." She raised her coffee cup. "To building things that last because they're built right." I clicked my cup against hers, feeling profound gratitude for the unexpected path my life had taken. Getting forced out had felt like the end of everything. Instead, it had been the beginning. My phone buzzed with a notification. Another message from someone who'd seen my video, thanking me for helping them recognize their own toxic work situation and find the courage to leave. I'd received hundreds of these messages over the past year. Each one reminded me why sharing my story had mattered, even when it felt vulnerable and scary. The best revenge truly wasn't proving them wrong or destroying them in return. It was refusing to let their actions define me. It was building something better. It was speaking truth that helped others find their own courage. It was knowing that while Lauren had tried to erase me from the narrative, I'd written a new story entirely. One where I wasn't a victim or a cautionary tale, but simply someone who'd survived, learned, and chosen to use that experience to build rather than destroy. I looked out at the team working below, people collaborating, laughing, solving problems together without fear of credit theft or retaliation. This was what ethical work looked like. This was what I'd been fighting for without quite knowing it. My video had gone public, yes, but the real victory wasn't in exposing what had happened to me. It was in creating a space where it wouldn't happen to anyone else. That evening, I opened my laptop one final time before heading home. My inbox contained the usual mix: client requests, team updates, speaking invitations. But one email stood out. It was from Marcus, my old colleague who'd warned me about Lauren all those months ago. He'd finally left Nexara too, he wrote, after watching the company's transformation post-scandal fail to address the deeper cultural issues. He was starting his own consultancy and wanted advice. I smiled and began typing a response, sharing what I'd learned about building from scratch, about valuing people over image, about the freedom that came from betting on yourself instead of waiting for broken systems to fix themselves. As I wrote, I realized this was the work that mattered now, not fighting old battles, but helping others write new stories. Not seeking revenge, but building alternatives. Not proving I'd been wronged, but showing what right could look like. The sun set outside my window, painting the sky in shades of gold and amber. Somewhere across the city, in offices and cubicles and conference rooms, people were probably experiencing what I'd gone through, being diminished, exploited, erased by those who should have been lifting them up. But maybe now, some of them would remember my story. Maybe they'd document their work, trust their instincts, know when to walk away. Maybe they'd understand that surviving didn't mean accepting, and moving on didn't mean forgetting. I finished the email to Marcus and closed my laptop, ready to go home. Behind me, the framed quote on my wall caught the fading light, words from my viral video that had become something of a mantra. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's showing you didn't need them to be right. I'd lived those words. I'd survived, rebuilt, and thrived not because I'd destroyed Lauren or fought to reclaim what was taken, but because I'd simply refused to let that chapter be my entire story. I'd written a better ending by building a better beginning. And that, I realized as I turned off the lights and headed home, was the only revenge that truly mattered, living well, working ethically, and helping others do the same. The rest was just noise.